Welcome to True Health Live, your favorite public health podcast. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and audio on your favorite podcast platforms. If you're interested in public health, then this is the space for you. Peace, everyone. I did not want to be looking at this thing. I want to do something stupid. Peace, everyone. I'm Deidre Sully.
Peace, I am Precious Stepney, also Yakira Eden.
How y'all doing? How you doing?
Good, I'm good. I feel like I haven't been here in a while.
Yes, it's been. Oh yeah. Oh my, yeah.
It's been like a month.
We did the dance.
We did dance.
I clipped to that because I could not resist. I was like, this is amazing. Well, today's show is going to be quick, and we may do a part 2. But today we are talking about relationship roles. So thank you all for joining us. As I said, tonight we're focusing on relationship roles and their profound impact on our health and well-being. We'll explore ways in which the roles we play can nurture, be more of a deterrent, right? Not only physical to our physical, but also emotional and mental health within our many interpersonal relationships. So, and I say that because, like, what do you think when you hear like relationships? Like, put that in the chat and we'll answer first. So, what do you think? You're either like when you hear relationships, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
I'd say the first thing that comes to my mind, of course, is that man-woman dynamic, right? That's the first relationship that we think of. But then it's like, as you pan that out, it's like, okay, well then there's the mother-child and the father-child dynamic. There's the dynamic of being a sibling. So, right. And I know we're going to kind of pull that thread. I'm not going to list them all because I know we're going to get a few responses from the chat, but those are the ones that jump out at me.
Yes, and you know what? And I'm gonna go to the chat and greet everybody in the chat. And I'm glad you said that, because that was the first thing that came to mind when I thought of like relationships. But it was like, no, but there's more than one. You know, we think about like just our interactions. It's all of our interpersonal relationships. And I think we think that because of the way the word relationship is used. Yes. You know, it's how we use words. But relationship can be with anybody. It can be your boss, you know, not just your partner, your intimate partner, or your spouse. It can be a cousin, you know, like your familial blood relative relationships, like, and what are the dynamics and like what's the role you play in at any given moment? Do you find yourself like, you know, always playing that same role, or do you shift and do you find like some point of flexibility, or I should say find some point of flexibility to, you know, be present in the moment? So and I have no answer. That's why I think in one of the posts it was like, I don't know. So we're going to talk about it today. Like, let's come up with some things. And like, if it has to be a dual show where it comes back and, you know, or if you want to share, you know, come on, I will put the link in the chat, because I always forget. I will put the link in the chat and you can come and share like what some of your thoughts are on like the relationship roles that we play. So in the meantime, I'm going to go to the chat. Peace, Naya. Peace. Thank you for joining. Peace, Maximilian. Peace, Sovereign Eve. Yes. Hey. Hey, y'all. Yeah, that is such a an NC thing. I'm realizing like I'm saying it more, y'all. And I used to say y'all all the time, but it's coming out a little different.
Is it really? Coming out with some drawl, some southern?
Coming out with a slight drawl. Like y'all. It's like, you know, we say y'all all the time. You know, you just kind of drop the L, but now it's pronounced.
That L is heavy now, huh?
Right.
You're gonna be yodeling soon.
Right. YAW, y'all, but now it's y'all. Like, okay, we gotta fix that. Fix it. Thank you. Creole Creation.
Everyone. Yes. Yeah, those are pretty.
Greetings, Ema Sequoia. Please stop.
Yes.
And Sequoia, Naya says, the answers. Status or relationship, a relation between two people. And I didn't look up no definitions. We're just chatting. A union between man and woman is the first thing that comes to my mind as well. Yeah, and I think that was for all of us. And so for those of you who are tuning in a little later, engage in the comments. Like, share what the first thing that comes to mind is. So so the other thing I wanted to say was, like, when it comes to relationships and our roles, like, a lot of things come into play. Like, what are our communication styles? One thing that I had, like, as I was like doing a little bit of like background for this episode,
Mm-hmm.
something that I saw that came up was like equality and equity, and I was like, can it really be equal? I mean, we know that there's a difference between equal and equitable.
Yes. Yeah.
But then it was like, can it really be either when both persons, both individuals, both parties are different?
Right.
So what equality are you looking for? And it made me think of reciprocity, and how it's outlined in Chief Yuya's book, 14 Keys. And it's like, nothing can ever come back the same as how you got
How it
it.
was
You know?
given. Right.
Right. So can it ever be equal or equitable? And so is this idea, because you hear, and this would be specifically in the man-woman relationships, what we hear now, can it really be like, oh, we put
Equal.
equal parts? No, you are different. So
No.
it's a little bit of a fallacy. Not even a little bit, it's a fallacy. Things that are different can never be equal. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I would agree. And I will say I did look at the definition, so I'm happy
Okay,
to yeah,
okay. Because
I'm just
I was
gonna
like, I'm
like
not
read
doing
it.
it.
One, right? The Googles. So the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. So all the relationship are is the connection between two things. So that made me think of charging my phone, right? Or like that outlet to plug
Yeah.
relationship,
Mm-hmm.
or the lock to key relationship. But even kind of pulling that back a bit, in response to what you were connecting with, equality, right? I won't even get into equity because that's different than equality. But excuse me, with equality, there isn't necessarily, I would imagine that there isn't a way to quantify that, but what you could set the intention of perhaps doing is fulfilling your role completely,
Right.
right? So that means you have to actually know your role,
The
right?
role.
And
Mm-hmm.
enter into an agreement with the other person that you're in this connection with or in this relationship with, and
Yeah.
they're in agreement that yes, Yakira Eden will do X, Y, and Z, and Yafe will do A, B, and C. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I would imagine that in that example, then we are equal contributors if I'm as long as I'm fulfilling all of the things that I agreed to, right? So like that's, but it wouldn't be like we're giving in the same way, because even though we
Yeah.
may each show up to do this show, we're not giving the same thing, right?
Mm-mm.
We're giving something very different. And it yeah, that's to me, that's just how it is. That's how it
Yeah.
is.
I would ask, like, is that, and I see the chat. I would ask, like, is that maybe where the equity comes in? Like, yes, we show up different, but then what's equitable is like we are giving each what we're able to give in its fullness, whatever that is.
Based on whatever the contract is, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I could say, oh, I'm doing my best, but you can't quantify that unless, or you can't really measure that unless we have established this set of agreements,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I'm just kind of putting it out there as a thought that I'm having about it. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I would say the equitable part would then be, are you checking off all of your boxes? Because you know what? You may have 7 and I have 5,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that may seem imbalanced, but when you look at the weight of what's being contributed, it in fact is balanced,
Mm-hmm.
based on the relationship and what the roles are.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's up to the people who are relating in that way or who are connecting to determine how they create that balance within the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that makes me think about like boundaries. And I know we're going to get into that, like how we relate and connect with boundaries. Yeah.
And it what you made me think about, like when you said contract, because then another example I thought of was like teacher and student. Like there's also then what's the power dynamic, and that could even be
Mm-hmm.
like boss and subordinate. Like then what's the power dynamic, and the power dynamic would be something that dictates what your role may be in a given in a given relationship or scenario. But then also what factors into how you fulfill that role are like the nuances of our individuality, like personality, character, and the like.
Right.
Sovereign Eats says interpersonal and intrapersonal connections comes to mind. Our own relationship with self is critical, so we may understand how to show up for and how to embrace others. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Peace on your radio. I got you. Sovereign Eats, I got you. Yeah, like exactly. Like I think that part is key. Like relationship with self, like, and because I think it goes to what you said earlier, is do we even know our role?
Right.
Even know our role.
Right.
The only way to know your role is to have that kind of look at yourself, but you also can't look at your own back, right? So it's like knowing yourself, but also being keen on how you are also perceived as well, because if you know, three people that don't know each other, and maybe it just has to be two, three people that don't know each other kind of perceive the same thing, it's probably the truth.
Maybe. It's like, really?
So we can
Yeah.
know, like, you did a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm
And
not talking to anybody. I'm just like making a
I
scenario.
think it happens to all of us in one way or another, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of get similar feedback, whether it be something that is uh that you find, or that you're open to receiving, or something that you may not be open to receiving. But either way, um it's an opportunity, right? Something is knocking to say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you should take notice of this, or you may need to make a change here. Um I do think, though, there's a distinction that I would make between knowing your role, by way of like dialogue with another person that you're relating to, um as being really different, when compared to like identifying for yourself, or like knowing yourself, as you said, for the exact same point that you made, because you can't see your back. But not only can you not see your back, I may say, I really enjoy bringing beads to the gathering,
Mm-hmm.
but Yafe is the bead lady, right? So in that instance, beading.
The bead lady sounds crazy.
I don't
She
know.
has issues.
Okay, I'll change it. The bead.
Like,
You know what? My analogies have been off lately. Okay, so
lady.
bead lady. No, okay.
I'm just joking.
I'm, it's just your thing. My point is, I may think that that's what I want to bring, right? Because, oh, I just stumbled into these beads. But the dynamics of the relationship would tell me, well, no, if I'm going to do anything with it, have a dialogue with you, and let's figure out how these can be used, because you probably have a much different vision for it than I would, because it's foreign to me, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, I can do that self-assessment, but it's when we come together and I say, okay, listen, I've got this, you've got that. I may have beads, but I do not have the hand eye, like the
Yeah.
patience, the coordination, the dexterity, or I don't know, endurance. I have none of it. I have none of it. It's not my ministry. So then that's when
Weaver.
the the bead weaver. Okay, yes.
But all the weavers Naya's a weaver. It's
She
the
is a
weaver.
weaver. Yes, yes, yes. And please check out the Anu Radio podcast, which is back. And the most recent episode actually features Safta Naya, and they're talking a lot about weaving and weaving music, and it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
But I like bead weaver. Okay. That's what you are. Well, that is what you're doing. You are weaving.
A little bit of weaving. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I understood what you were saying. I
Yeah.
still got it. I just like, oh no, does that mean I'm the old lady? Probably. It's
I wasn't even
I,
thinking that.
well, no, I made that. That's the role now. That's the other thing. Acceptance. Acceptance. Is that the last stage of grief? Acceptance. Tears. What's a tears?
Right, right, right. But you know what? When I think about relationships from the perspective of, okay, so we've connected, right? So let's try to like stack it, right? So we've connected and we've come to this agreement. I'm
Mm-hmm.
clear on what my role is, and you're clear on what your role is. Now that we have that clarity, whether you call it an agreement or a contract, right? Whether it's written or verbal,
Mm-hmm.
I've said I'm going to, like True Health Live, I've said I'm going to be here and be present and contribute. You've made agreements to lead, prepare and make sure there's a momentum for us to follow. I even get a wake up call. No, I'm joking. No nap during podcast time. But
no naps on Tuesdays.
right. But then from there, based on that agreement, there are like boundaries and parameters that are then established. But we can think about those relationships where you don't come into a specific agreement and the boundaries become the challenge, right? So let's think of that parent child dynamic. That can be one where it often, those lines about roles and expectations, number one, they kind of ebb and flow, right? When we're the child,
The
we're clear.
boundary, it shifts as
Right.
people evolve and grow, because everybody.
Evolve or devolve even, right? If they're aging and maybe becoming unwell, or maybe, or maybe an adult child has a specific setback and then has a
Yeah.
greater need, like there's
Mhm.
this,
Yeah. 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 I was almost putting my name on the orange juice at home when going back home one time. Like that's gonna mess up the relationship. I don't want to have my name on.
don't do
But
it.
that is a reality for some people. But the truth is, how does that affect things? Like, we could even see. I was watching well, I was trying to watch this film about a bank heist, right? And I clicked on it because the main actor characters, the cast was melanin dominant, and it was like a different kind of film. And one of the storylines or backstories to one of the characters, and this is, I'm just kind of catching it through my, because it was barely like, I don't even know what I was doing. You know how you just have background noise?
Right.
So, but it made me pause because I was like looking at the dynamic of what was happening with this family. So the sister and her son had moved in with her brother for whatever reason. There was a setback, and
Mm-hmm.
the dialogue was, the relationship had become strained because the son was not was not a child. This was a grown man. He was, past puberty. He has a job. So there's the other thing. It's like you're also still, kind of in that child role with mom, and then you're
Right.
both with uncle, and uncle has his own life, and uncle wants to get his honeys back in house, and so it's creating like a very strained relationship. But then there's also the dynamic of two men in the same space, not being able to spread out. So I just thought, I was like, oh, this is very interesting,
Mm-hmm.
happening. And I'm not even saying all of it. What caught my ear is just like kind of how they were talking to each other, and like something specific that was said, and just thinking about the idea of like single parents and manhood. And I was just like, oh, but But for purposes of this conversation, I was like, that put a strain on the
Right.
relationship, because there's a bunch of adults living with one another, and and some were not in their proper roles.
Right. Right. I mean, I think when you think about circumstances, and even I know, we were going to look at exploring a connection to mental health, but even thinking about physical health and well-being, um, during COVID, right? That was a time when family members were elected to kind of move in together, or people elected to move in together and cohabitate for a myriad of reasons. And some perhaps may just be that preservation of mental health and well-being, right? To have someone there to interact with while you're, locked in, if you
Ah,
will,
right.
on quarantine, for those that were. Um, and without that set of agreements, like what those stressors could potentially be and how you navigate that, um to me, it's like, looking at the title, it's like relationship roles. It's one thing to come together and connect, but you have to know what your role is and actually fulfill that thing in order to mitigate those stress points, because they'll be there either way, right? Even with the boundaries, even with the leave the toilet seat up or down, or put the toilet tissue forward or back, or whatever, or who washes the dishes on what day.
It should be over because then you could listen. It's a
Which way
thing.
are you saying? Let's not
It's a
let's
thing. It's a thing. It's a thing. We won't even go there.
I know, for everyone across the globe, like, it's a universal, like, you mentioned the toilet paper roll and a fight
Yep.
will break out, a fight will ensue.
Why you put it on that way? You gonna waste more paper.
Oh wow, oh my gosh. Oh, that's funny. That's
Are
funny.
you using too much? You know we can't go. I guess it's COVID. All the toilet paper was gone.
As if you can't. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was funny. So we were rationing toilet paper as a household. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. But
Never
I'm curious for
wash.
those that are. Oh, go ahead. What'd you say?
I said, never mind, just go wash. It's like, no, we gotta
I
save the
know
paper.
that's what I was saying. I was
Go
like,
wash.
yeah, we weren't even focused on washing. It was just that
Right.
doggone toilet paper. It would just seem so elusive. There was nothing else we could ever do, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm actually curious about how you make the decision to enter into a particular, like, let's say, a work relationship, right? Whether it's beyond just colleagues, like, what sort of things do we look for, and how do you guard yourself while still remaining open and receptive, right? To having just that interpersonal connection.
Mhm. I think that that's a. It's not a hard one, but it's more so like, okay, where do I begin? Because the first thing is, what it is like, if we're talking about like the relation with work colleagues, right? Whatever level they're at. The first part is, that is more, the first level of that is contractual, right?
Right.
Like you're filling out the application, you're applying, you go through the interview process, and then you sign the paperwork. I'm gonna give you such and such years of my life, even though it doesn't say that. That's what's really happening.
That's the commitment, right?
Right. I'm gonna give you such and
For
such
a few
this
dollars.
amount of
Yeah.
time, right, for a couple dollars. And so then I think that's what dictates the relationship first, right? And so there's and maybe not for everybody, because some people are doing things that they really want to do, or you're in your profession, like, so for me, like, I'm in the field that I studied for, right? So like there might be mixtures of that, like, okay, I'm gonna do this and you pay me, but there's also maybe like, I like talking to people, I like to educate people, in matters of health and things like that. So there's a little bit of a trade-off, but at the end of the day, I think that it's still like a contractual. But then the relationships with the colleagues happens at the next level, and if somebody thinks there's a level in between, please feel free to share in the chat. I think at the next level, there's the relationship with colleagues, but that kind of happens. I think you mentioned it earlier. It's like it kind of just happens, right? But there's not. Maybe we don't know yet what the boundaries are. Actually, that's not accurate. Your HR pretty much gives you the boundaries.
Right. Right.
HR gives you the boundaries,
And even your
but
role, I would say,
and you
establishes the
and your role,
boundary as well.
right? So
Some.
that so yeah, so the boundaries and the role is given, but then those interpersonal relationships start to form, and then there's like another contract, and this one is kind of like unspoken, I would imagine, that kind of occurs. And so that's the part where I'm thinking your question kind of made, like, how do you navigate that, or how do you decide that? And that part, I think I start out very I don't want to say closed, but maybe that's the best word for it, because it's like caution. Like,
Mm-hmm.
caution, like, don't get too close to here, and I won't get too close to you. We're here to do a job.
Right.
But then I can't help but be, a silly person sometimes, and it just kind of like comes out, or I can't help it laugh at something that's funny. If it's funny, I'm gonna crack up, and I'm gonna crack up. Like, I can't hold it. So then, and you kind of accidentally, I don't know if it's accidentally, but you kind of
Yeah,
fall
you
in.
stumble. Yeah, you
You stumble,
organically kind of.
like,
Yeah.
right into,
Right.
deeper relation. And I only say deeper because in many cases, and this was me for many years. You are interacting and engaging with people at work more than you are with your own blood family member.
Right.
So a deeper relation. That's why I say a deeper relationship starts. But I would say I do start off very like tight, like,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to be professional. But sometimes that just kind of melts off. Um, but it's particular people, and I think that would be true for
Yeah.
most folks. It's not like a thing for everybody. You kind of suss out. I think we all do this thing, where we suss out, like, okay, who's gonna be my friend at work?
And it's also, who's getting the joke, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know there are particular people, that I come across on my journey, or that I've kind of crossed paths with on my journey,
Mhm.
and they got the jokes that I got, right? Or they caught the funny, like, the little thing that
Yeah.
happened that nobody else noticed, and you're
Like,
like
did you see that?
trying, right, right,
You
right.
make
And then
eyes
you see
like,
they notice it, and then it's just like, oh, we got something, even if it's
mhm,
that heckler quality,
mhm.
there's a similarity. And so, even just going back to that definition of relationship, that's the connection. So yes, we're colleagues, or yes, we're, soccer moms together, or we're doing yoga together, or whatever we're doing. That's one layer or
Yeah.
one level. But then it's like, you will find more and more connections with maybe one or two of those people, as opposed to the whole collective. Um and I would agree that, yeah, it is definitely with caution. I think in the past I'd shared, I don't know if it was here or in some other podcast arena or YouTube arena, but I'd shared some of my professional experiences that actually um almost became a cautionary tale. Like, don't get too close, because, if and when you're promoted, this can be a problem,
It was our toxic.
because then you're cracking the jokes, and you have a relationship with a peer, right, or a colleague that is your equal, as far as role and function, perhaps. But then you say certain things, or there's a level of comfort that helps you lean in and be, more open and more silly. But then when your role shifts, or that person's role shifts, it can be stressful, right?
Yeah.
It can be problematic.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you even brought up the work relationship because recently I have been we're doing this program. It's called First Break All the Rules. So and it's a book. It's an actual like text, not textbook like a textbook, but a book. And it's promoted by, I want to say like Gallup. It's very similar. Well, no, it's not the similar, but it's one of those things where workplaces will adopt a certain thing and say like this is how we're gonna move with our employees, and integrate like
Organizational
a
culture.
culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so one of the things that I think is one of the and they do it, which I think is kind of cute. They use like this camping analogy. So like you start off like the workshops and it's base camp, and then it's like camp one. So you're like traveling a trail
You're
and camp,
taking, okay.
but you're going up, and the end of it is like the summit. So like there's gonna
Oh,
be
so
this
you're like hiking.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. I'm like, this is so cute. So one of the camps, it was talking about having a best friend at work and how that actually and I have to find the article. I'll put them in the description. And the article, well, two of the articles was talking about how it's good to have a best friend at work because it contributes to your mental health if you're
Of
well
course.
at work because you have someone that you can connect with. And so this is this goes into like our relationship roles and like what we play. So like who are you? What kind of player are you
Mm-hmm.
for another person? And we're talking about work right now, but like whatever situation is, and how you're helping to kind of uplift that person, in whatever the scenario is or whatever the
Right.
surroundings are. So I thought that was really interesting. I was like, oh, best friend at work. And you do. And one thing we talked about, I was like, you think about how people sometimes say like my work wife or my work husband.
Yes. Right.
And I'm not talking about the ones that do get cross boundaries and get out of hand. I'm
No, right.
literally
Just that
talking about
dynamic of, right.
the
Right.
platonic relationships. If that's something that they do in their culture, like it's okay because not everybody does that. Not
Right.
everybody, moves that way. Like I don't move that way. Not
Right.
anymore. Like there are no like having these platonic relationships with other men, but some people do that, or other women for a man. So but some people do that, and it does something for them to have like that person that I can go to. And how many times like do you see like posts and they're like when you show up to work and your work friend isn't there. It's like, and I've had those moments like, oh, I'm not here this day. It's like, oh
Right.
my god, it's only 9:30. Like
Yes. Right. No one to celebrate with, no one to commiserate
no
with.
one to
Yeah,
communicate
it
with.
becomes an issue. Right, right. Yeah. And hmm, I think that idea of that, even the idea of that work friend, um it it's really important to just be cognizant of those boundaries. And I know we were going to kind of explore other dynamic, other relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think the parent child one, or those familial relationships are great to pull on. But when you think about, I know when I think about the parent child dynamic,
Yeah.
it's just like that's, I would say that historically, right, unless you as a woman, you are mated, you are, obedient and moving in the direction of your instruction, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
not doing that, that parent child dynamic can be very, really, really chaotic. And I know many of us probably had that sort of chaotic, wait, who's the parent, who's the child, what role am I to play today? um and that can be a stressor, right? It can actually throw you out of what your natural flow should be. It makes me even think of a post that Chief Yuya shared, I think it was yesterday, where the mother was preparing it looked like sandwiches actually,
The
but clearly, say it again.
Well, I think they were putting away groceries, and
Is
she
that
was,
what it was? Okay, I just saw
yeah,
lunch meat and bread, and I thought.
yeah, yeah. It was. She was like, put this in there, do this, because yeah, and
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I was like, are they look like they're preparing for an outing. I remember those back in the day. But like making all the sandwiches, it was like an assembly line. But even in that video, when looking at it from the lens of relationships and roles, it's like the role of the mother is so different than the role of the father, right? And you can try to reflect that hard, stern, do this, do that, that masculine energy as a woman. But the messaging that Chief was providing is that throws the woman complete, that takes away her opportunity to be soft, right? To be feminine. And that happens a lot in our jobs as well, right?
Mhm.
Or in our parent child relationship dynamics,
Yeah.
because things are so off balance that someone else steps in or steps up in a way that it robs them of opportunities to really be themselves, or to even explore what being themselves looks like.
Looks like. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I was thinking, work, right. It all does that, because then it's like we could get caught up in like, well, this is my role at work, right? And I have been this, like, well, this is who I am, and it's like that's not who you are. That's what you do, and that's what
Right.
you do right now. But we kind of misconstrue our roles. And I see you in the chat, sorry, I'm coming. We take on these roles that are actually against what our nature is, or our natural role is. And so
Mm-hmm.
then when we're moving in the different parts of our lives, the lines get all mixed up. And then so we're playing this part in the house when it's like that's not who you are here. You could be that over there, but that's not who you are here. And then that's even, there's a few things with that. It's like for if we're following a particular culture, like that shouldn't even be a question. Like that
Right.
should be a thing. But if you're not, and you're, you're just kind of like, oh, I'm just out here in the world, which is, if that's for you, that's fine. It's like that's where flexibility comes in. You have to know, and even like it's kind of like code switching. You have to know
Right.
what in what space.
It is code switching. and
Yeah.
and 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 when you're and I would say, when you don't have a culture, and these parameters that govern, like, that's not what we do. And yeah, that may be what you do, that's not who you are, especially in this space, or when interacting with your mate. um then what can happen is, as a woman, we become really adulterated, right? We become really hard and masculine. And
Mm.
um I remember being asked what I enjoyed about a former position I had. And I said, I really loved mentoring some of my subordinates. And as I started sharing stories about the things that I helped them do, go back to school and do this, it was primarily for the males that I worked with, that I supervised. And and it was Chief Yuya, and it was brought to my attention that, that me being in that role actually pulls me further away,
Mhm.
right? Me supporting and serving and doing and guiding and instructing, right? Giving a light as if I could, um was really not at all what my role was. And it actually, like, pulled me further and further from where I should have been, or where I could potentially be. And we don't think about how much imbalance that creates within us,
Right.
right? Like,
Enter health talk.
yes, right.
Right.
But wait, we should get to, because there's a bunch of comments from
Right.
Salmonese, right?
So, and the link is in the chat for those of you. And I was looking down a little bit because I realized like I can't monitor LinkedIn on the same screen, so I have to actually have it on a separate screen. So, but the link is in the chat for those of you who would like to join. If you are watching on LinkedIn, I will just put it on the screen just very quickly, and you can join via the link on if for those of you if you're watching on LinkedIn. But this is the live show, so if you're coming in after, it ain't gonna work. So on to the chat. Sarah is she said, yeah, I think yeah, what we share in common helps to foster relationships. So you build up the connection through sharing or sharing experiences. Yes. Um, What's that? Actual real things, not virtual exchange, which I'm convinced destroys the connection because it never goes beyond assumptions, presumptions, and a visual interplay, which is contrary to our true self. You know what? That reminds me of something she said once, like, how do you know that what's portraying, like what you're seeing on this screen is
It's
really me.
real. Right.
This is
Yeah.
literally a series of zeros and ones
Right.
and computer putting together what they think is me and what I look like. So like the truth is like you probably would need to see a person in the flesh to get a more accurate or the truth of what and who they really are. Because can we be sure that the computers got putting the picture together properly? I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at myself too, but I'm just saying. But
Well, listen, I mean, I think the whole virtual work experience, Zoom meetings, and all these different, this, right? StreamYard. I think even right now, you're only looking at us from the chat, the bus line up. So,
not even
think of
over
all
here.
of the right? Think of all of the viral videos over the past 2 years, 3 years that have cropped up because someone inadvertently failed to turn their camera off or didn't realize that the angle was such that you could see, oh, they're in their boxers, oh, they're in their, whatever, or nothing, from here down. So yeah, this is truly an illusion, right? It's not.
One of my favorite COVID commercials. It was Folgers. I had thought they stopped making Folgers. But I think it's your team can see your upper thigh. I died. I was like, that's hilarious. I was like, oh, good job, marketing team, capitalizing off current events.
Uh-huh.
Good job.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, oh, I'm sorry. So she continues to say, so I'll stop. So, and visual interplay, which is contrary to our true self. Work friends are not real. They are created out of convenience. So I
That's
hope
true.
that's what I was trying to say. Like you stumble into it because that's where you are because you signed the contract,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
and happenstance most times, right? And it doesn't mean that deeper relationships are not formed because people start to go to weddings and share life events together.
Right. But
So,
that's not as
but it's still
common, right?
right.
Yeah.
But even still, would you have been friends had you not signed
No.
a contract with this entity?
No.
You know, um, unless because check it. When one person changes jobs, the relationship shifts, doesn't it? I think so, and
Right.
I think it shifts depending on how close you were or weren't. Because I think about and also what the relationship dynamic was. So, for example, like I do still have chit chats with some of my former staff members, like the females. Because some of them have reached out to ask for certain things like what do you call it, references. I'm like recommendations, references, and things like that. And just like how are you, because some of them they had whole I experienced them have whole like life changes, so like they became mothers.
Right.
I've watched them get married and all types of things. So some of it is like how are you doing, how's baby's one now, like so many things. So you kind of check on them, but my engagement is not what it was because I was
No.
before, but there's no need to have this constant conversation because, were we friendly and acquaintances? Yes. And if they ever need a reference, of course I'll do that. But were we like daily, everyday friends? No, it doesn't mean that we didn't share like hilarious moments together and have
Mm-hmm.
hilarious experiences. But I'm not gonna be like, oh, guess what? I'm doing this now. Like
Right. Right.
maybe, once, once the contracts start flowing in, maybe because I know these are people who have skill sets, but even still, I would be calling them regarding business. It's not
Right.
necessarily like this, like, hey girl, well, yeah, today was crazy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you
So
know,
there's like a range then, right? So
yeah,
like I'm reading it and I did agree that like yeah, that's true. But thinking about it and listening to even your examples, it's not I wouldn't necessarily say that work friends are not real. I think there's a spectrum, right? There's a
right.
friendship spectrum, if you will. And that hey girl, hey was probably never the work friend anyway, right?
Mhm.
It may have been, hey, how was your day? Like, how was that event last weekend when you come back to work on that Monday? But um, it's very different. You're not sharing maybe all of the things that are truly going on in your private life, right?
Right, right.
So it's just not as intimate. So I would necessarily say that they're not real. I think that they're not as open as the more intimate friendships or relationships may be. And I think that that's perfectly appropriate even if you
Yeah,
stay on that job, because you don't need all of your information everywhere, it, that's
yeah,
where you work, you need the money,
yeah.
like
I agree. It was a spectrum or levels, if you will, because that now because so I'm even thinking about it now. Like there are people that I like. You say good morning, good dawning to everyone, but like maybe I'll sit and have water cooler talk. Like we'll
yeah.
goes right across from somebody else, and we'll chat for like an hour and just like talking about nothing for the most
Hmm.
part, but like having a
Hmm.
good time doing it. But am I expecting her? And maybe I know, like, some things that are going on in her life, but these are things that she's willing to share. But am I saying, like, well, how did you sleep last night? And
Right.
I wouldn't listen if that was shared, but we're not necessarily going too deep into
There you
deep.
go.
But some were actually like really not, because I'm gonna say this. Some people are just they are genuinely just like maybe they really want to know. I had an experience. I went to the gym. The instructor was crazy. I thought I was gonna have to pick up my stomach off the floor, and they did check on me. Check on me like after because I was out of it for the rest of the day. I was loopy. I didn't know what was happening. No up from down, and it was just like what happened. I think it was the jumper jacks. I don't know, but it was the last day of the fast, so I was just
Oh
like,
no.
I was just like, I don't know what's happening right now. And they did check on me, and it's just like I wanted to make sure you're okay. And it's like, yeah, I'm good, I'm alive. So I appreciated that. But again, are we sitting telling our most intimate secrets? No, and I don't think either one of us or any of us like expect that from the other person.
Right.
Okay, that's okay.
Right.
I mean, it does make me think, like, and also, well, before I say that, I'll say like that is the role that I play, or that's the role that they play for me. Like maybe like this is the person that I come in and like, we're nice to one another because we genuinely like to have like banter or whatever talk. And I'm not saying it's superficial, but like this is what the relationship. This is the level of
Yeah.
this relationship
Hmm.
here, and it doesn't need to go any further, and that's totally
Hmm.
fine. And that's the role that I play. I'm gonna play the like I'm gonna chat with you in the morning, and have
Yeah.
like
Right.
that's the role, and that's okay. You know, the other thing I was gonna say is like it does make me think about the truth, the reality of how many words we use unnecessarily, how much talking we do unnecessarily. So I do sometimes think of that, but then it's like, but then if it's like I'm monitoring my words, then it's like, am I gonna be the weirdo? Like I'm not talking today, How do I, am I gonna be the weirdo? But I do think about like how much of my conversation with anybody is unnecessary.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I think so Savanese was flowing with us. So she kind of gave, okay, acquaintance, colleague, we cool. Yes,
Okay.
got it. Got it. So right, not friend. She's like, I'm doubling, tripling down on not friend. I got it. Message received.
Client.
Message
Okay.
received. Client. She even put
We
client
get it.
down there. Right,
We
right,
get it.
right.
We get it.
Right.
What did she say? Yep, true. I think this is when you were talking about oh my god, because I saw it when she put it up, but now I can't recall what this was in.
Like working outside of your role, like how your
Yes.
work can pull you out
Yes.
of that femininity or
Yes.
even masculinity, for a
Yeah.
man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Versatility, I can be what the space or group calls for. Responsibility,
Right,
respond with ability. Yeah,
right.
I like
So you
that
can
better.
kind of morph and take on the role that you need to, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
But again, it goes back to what you said. Like, it is the role that I need to, because I am in this working world. Is the role that I need to take. Yes, I can be versatile, but because it takes me out of this feminine role that I know that I want to play because I'm made to do that. Um, is it something that I should be doing? Like, yeah, it's good to be versatile, but it should have boundaries as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say in my example, the things that I had shared that I was doing weren't necessarily part and parcel with the role, right? Like it wasn't in my job description. It was just I thought that this was how I should be in this role, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when it was brought to my attention, I didn't at first just up and quit, right? Eventually I was able to transition out of that role. But what I wound up doing is um redirecting redirecting things back to those individuals, because I was more aware, if it wasn't situational or what specific to the job, right? If it was more, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, so what do you think about that? I would actually just say, you know what, it's not even in my role. I'm confident you know the answer, and I would just pull myself out of that because it was just how I was relating and connecting to those people.
Mm-hmm.
I was just being masculine, right? That's what it boils down to. So then it was an opportunity to do something different in that space. And also recognize that when I wasn't in that space, I needed to like lean even more heavily into the things that will make me feminine, right? Like what are the feminine arts and what does that look like, and how do I not drive myself crazy or put myself in a state of unwellness because I'm living an imbalanced or unbalanced lifestyle. And
Mm-hmm.
that, because that's when our bodies start talking to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when the stressors come in. That's
Yep.
it. That's it.
Yep. Yep. The stresses. And I think we had a podcast. I had something about stress. You can go to DJ Sally on YouTube and find it.
Yes.
It's it's there.
Yes.
But I think we had a conversation about stress on one of our pre
Mm-hmm.
about how when we're in that, and this is how if you're moving in a role or you're fulfilling a role or you're in a relationship where the stress level it's affecting your stress levels in a negative way. We did talk about how that can affect your health because what the way
Hormone levels. Yeah.
right, the how your body talks to
Mm-hmm.
you, you that means you start overproducing cortisol. Like if you're going to be in
Yep.
this constant state of stress, your body starts to produce cortisol and you remain in that fight or flight mode. You never come
Yeah.
down. So it's like adrenaline, like constant. And so because you're in that constant state of like, run, 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 fight,
Mm-hmm.
fight, fight, the body starts to lose like where it's supposed to be, and it can start to affect you neurologically. It can
Yes.
start to shut down certain things. If you can, all types of things, and like again,
Yeah.
we talked about the stress response in previous episodes. So like our relationship roles, how we fulfill them, and how we allow others to fulfill their roles, in the relationship, is key. It is key. It does impact our health, and so and I think Sovereign Eat said it earlier about like taking that critical eye on like what um, it wasn't our own relationship to self,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can be able to like recognize when something is having a negative or positive response on our overall well-being.
Right.
Yeah, I had a question, and this will be the last one before we go, because I want folks who are watching, and if you're watching later, make sure you visit Master Manuelec's channel. He's doing
Oh
his
yes.
and we'll share that. I wanted to ask one last question for those of you who are still with us, and I see some people have joined, and if checking us out after, we kind of touched on this, like how cultural or societal expectations influence the roles we take on in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of touched on that, like there's this expectation of the jobs that we should get, and the level of success, and what the level of success is for a certain person, and then how that kind of pushes us, or pulls and or pulls us out of, or pushes us into certain roles, good or bad. So,
Right.
and some of that is because of cultural and societal expectations. And for the most part, I would say no, yeah, it's both. Yeah, yeah, they influence. So that's a question that I have for those of you in the chat. So I give you a little time to answer. But I see something in the chat, but I'll wait. Did you have something?
No, I wanted to hear you repeat the question because I want.
How how do cultural or societal expectations influence the roles we take on in our
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that the benefit, right? That the gift, one of the many gifts of being connected to a community and living a specific, right, prescribed culture, is that it does impact how I navigate relationship, right? Because it sets the expectation um, that we're all connecting and relating in a particular fashion. And I would say that that creates more safety and stability, right? It's not a crapshoot if we're all meeting the standard, right? If we're not, we're human, so we're not always infallible, so we're not necessarily always there, but we are always clear on where the mark is when
Mhm.
you enter. I would say if you're outside of a prescribed or specific culture or community, that's not necessarily the case. You kind of bump into people along your journey, right, through life,
Mhm.
whether it's literally on the bus or in school, or like you make these connections just by happenstance. And you may find similarities, and you'll connect based on those similarities or commonalities, but you'll eventually realize that may be problematic, right?
Mhm.
Because you may have a fundamental difference that winds up making that relationship detrimental to you or to the other person for that matter.
Mhm.
So I would say that, having that definitely creates more safety and more protection for all involved.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, I wanted one to the. I thought it was a comment, but it is a comment, but it was in some. It was, I think it was in the moment, so I should have read it then. I apologize. But Sovereignty says causing us to relive trauma responses to, or choosing to relive them. I
Mhm,
think that was before I asked the question, so I can't
mhm.
remember. Everything's moving so fast. I can't remember like exactly what that was in reference to, but if you remember Sovereignties, please just jot it down in the chat. Um, I don't necessarily see any answers, so maybe nobody else has a thought or question. So if you are watching after the fact, please feel free to put it in the chat. And I want to acknowledge, like, there are many different things that or nuances that go into relationship roles. Like I was saying before, like communication styles, the concern about whether we have an equal partnership or if it's equitable, and really taking a dive on like deep look into what that looks like. Are we the supportive one, right now? And what kind of support is it? Is it financial? Is it emotional?
Right.
The decision making, in the culture that we follow, it's like, yes, there's decision making, but it's levels. Like, I'm not just gonna decide I'm gonna go to Mexico next week. It doesn't work like that, And I'm not, and the truth is, like, you don't even have to follow the culture that I follow, where just making a decision to go on what could be expensive trip
Right.
is okay in anybody's book. Um, how do we acknowledge conflict resolution? And again, we're talking about all types of relationships. Like, as you said, parenting roles, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Our and the boundaries, our family roles. Like, I know that I recently had like a conversation with a blood relative, and it was just like, I'm gonna reiterate what the boundaries are, and but I'm not even gonna go into detail as to why I decided to do X, Y, Z,
Right.
because at this point, it's a moot point. Like, if you really wanted to know and you cared, the question would have came, or it wouldn't actually been a genuine question,
Right.
years ago, and not like very low key jabs, because that I'm not gonna do. So you're gonna get like quarantined very quickly
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
And that's me setting boundaries and letting you know what role I'm gonna play in this relationship moving forward, and what your
Exactly.
role is gonna be. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Um, Intimacy and affection, gender roles. That was a big one. I thought we were gonna have more about that, but we were talking more about like the boundaries, and because it's a big deal. So again, this can definitely be a part two conversation, and we'll have more people like join us. To talk about it, because I think it makes a big difference in our health, on a day-to-day basis, because we're constantly interacting with people.
Mm-hmm.
What's
Right,
up?
and depending on the type of relationship, and depending on, the agreements that you've made, or the contracts that you've entered into, that could determine whether it's going to be a beneficial relationship or a detrimental one,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Sabrini says one pervasive influence is the idea of having house, car, and land, and degree as a thank you, and degree as a woman, while sacrificing our most fertile, dainty years.
Exactly.
So family expectations. Yeah, that is.
Hmm.
Thank you. Yes. Well, family. Oh wait, I got that there. This is a family. This is a very real cultural flaw in some parts of the world. Family.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
The
yeah,
the word, just the idea of family, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I mean,
How many times
it,
will we
it might
confuse
set the expectation that you're adulterating yourself, right? Like that,
right
many
because
of
of
us have experienced that. Well,
yes.
you're supposed to do this. You're my daughter, my son, my
Mm-hmm.
mother, my father, and it's like, no. No,
No.
that's not true. And I would agree, that is where the boundaries come in. And I would even connect that back to the knowing yourself, and doing that honest assessment of yourself, because oftentimes the boundaries don't even need to be stated. Once you are paying attention to what is and isn't acceptable, you may, and this has been shared and covered in some of Chief's podcasts, you can rewrite the contract by yourself, right? You can say, no, I'm not doing that ever
Mm-hmm.
again.
Yeah.
And the person will get the memo, because you're not going to show up to the party, whether the party is the party, right? Whether it's the baiting for an argument, whether it's gaslighting, whether it's, making unrealistic financial demands, whether it's yeah, of course I should live in your house because I'm your dot dot dot, whatever the connected dots are to that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, no. And
Mm-hmm. And and also,
that's it.
and and speaking of, and I know this will be the last thing I say, I
Yes,
promise.
yes, because
Um,
yes.
and we, because I recently had to say the words out of my mouth. No, I have just made it clear of what I will tolerate versus what,
Uh-huh.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's, and I can see, like, but sometimes that what we have made the decision to tolerate, and how we're going to change the contract of what my role is going to be in your life, it can be offensive to
Yes.
some because of cultural or old
Expectations. Yep.
old cultural expectations. And
Yep.
when I say cultural, like the culture that we might have come from, I'll
Mm-hmm.
say old expectations and influences. And yeah, like and it's like, no, this ain't, but then I had to sit, and this, I'm talking about myself. I did have to sit and be like, okay, but this is a reality. Like, this is this person's perception, or how this person experienced my actions or movement. This is what this is the emotion or feeling it caused in.
Right.
So it's like, can I, kind of sit and have an attitude and be like, well, this is it. No, this is what it is. Okay, that's how you felt. I'm very sorry about that. I don't know what to tell you, but this is how it is. But it doesn't mean that we have to have a horrible relationship. It just has changed. It's shifted, and that's okay, because we are also both on different paths and different. We both are here, and we got a different question to answer.
Right. Right. I just thought this was really funny.
Yeah.
She's
Remember when we had rotary phones and you hung up? I'm done. I am so
click.
done.
She's so funny. She's like, no explanation. No
We
explanation.
phones. Yeah, there was I saw this post the other day. It was talking about 80s babies or Gen X. I think it was Gen X, and it was the one that showed the merry-go. Remember the merry-go-rounds?
Uh-huh.
Cut yourself and get 10. I was like, those were the best, because we would run them really fast and like swing off of them. And we,
Yes.
at however many miles per hour. But one of them just showed like a pole in the street light, and it was just like, we were
Yes,
out.
who remember right. Who
We were out.
you know what's funny? I think my children, I don't know, maybe because I carry some of those old school things. So my youth actually know that as well. Like I kind of laugh. I was like, well, I guess they'll just be like, yeah, we're marked by the 70s baby. That is our mother, because I'm like, yeah, y'all can go. Just make sure, before the light comes
Like,
on, you're back in that.
and so it's like, so we're, until that comes on, we're out. You will not be able to reach me unless you are there with me on the
Right.
outside. I
Yeah.
am unavailable.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. Like, right. So back to, like, to rotary phones. It's like, or you miss that other number. It's like, I'll come back later and try it again.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you just heard a click. I do remember the rotary phones. But for that matter, at this point, I remember landlines. I think we're at that point.
I
Like,
know. But you know what? And I'm wondering if she's referring to, like, some things don't need to be explained, right? It's like, it's just, I don't need to tell you where my boundaries are. You'll know that you crossed the line when you hit a click. That's what I think. I have a feeling that's what.
click. Hello?
It's like,
That,
oh, I guess I shouldn't say that again, right? Like,
right. Or and depending on the relationship dynamic, it can go where, okay, I understand,
yeah,
or go to the left. And if it goes to the left, it can be a click for a very long time until you can get your behavior right.
right, right, and respect the boundaries that are being established. Yeah, yeah,
And the other thing
absolutely.
about boundaries, you don't always have to know. And this is not me saying, like, because there's something, especially when it comes to mental health, you do want to make sure you're having those checkups on people, right? Like, so there's a difference, there's a discernment that has to happen of whether it's, a, lifestyle shift and somebody is doing something like for their own, well-being, so their role in your life is shifting and your role in their life, and whatever this relationship dynamic is shifting. But there has to be a discernment if it is an issue of mental health, and we can have
Oh
like
yeah.
about what that discernment is, but that's not today's conversation.
Soon come, soon come. Yes.
Right. Sorry, yes, it is. No explanation. A grown
Yeah,
woman,
that's so she said, yep. It's just, you get the click. You get the
grown woman things.
click.
So, thank you so much for joining us. We will come back in two strongs, right? Yes, in two strongs.
Yes.
So that will be Tuesday, the 17th of October. It'll be the mid-month. And we'll be back with a whole nother topic. We're gonna keep it open for next strong. We want to see like if we're gonna have a guest on the show. So we'll keep it a little bit open. Definitely join us. I one thing I did want to say, I forgot. Maybe we'll do this next time. October, because this is a public health podcast. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we normally do a breast cancer show, but we're probably not going to do one this season. But I do want to acknowledge that it is breast cancer awareness, and so people are really pushing like mammograms and making sure that we're getting our screening for breast health. So for those of you women who are and it's not just like, oh, if you're 40 and over. If you are 40 and over, if you have a history of breast cancer, shoot, at this point, because they're seeing more and more young women who don't necessarily have history,
Right.
want to get your screening, or you can even talk to your doctor, like make sure you're doing, your own self. I'm literally doing an exam.
Self-exam.
You want to do that, and it doesn't necessarily, even when you go to your gynecologist, like I know I get one, like even in addition to whatever I do at home, whenever I go to the OBGYN, she also does a checkup. So you want to make sure that you're doing that, because sometimes it's good, and I'm not saying like it's good to have other people kind of diddle your boobies, but you want to make sure that you're getting like those checkups, because if you feel something, you want to make sure you know what it is. So like definitely look into mammograms, and most counties they're offering, because it is October, so they're offering like free, and don't let people, while it may be like uncomfortable for some, because you have to remember, like, we have different breast density, our tissue density is different, our sizes are different, so what one person's level of discomfort may not be yours. So the other thing I do want to like kind of and I'm saying this because I got my mammo yesterday, I want to make sure like people are not letting stories, anecdotal stories, like deter them from getting their checkups. We want to make sure that our breasts are healthy. So for you women and men too, because breast cancer, men can get breast cancer.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
we all want to be making sure that our breasts are healthy.
Yes. And I would just say doing those self tests, right? Doing the self exams, I should say. It also helps you to know the landscape of your body, right?
Yeah,
To know, because a lot of times it very well may not be
right.
cancerous tissue, but you may just have little polyps, or you may just have
Yeah.
little nodules, or have
Look,
little grains or tissue um in those ducts, and you should know that, so that nobody freaks you out. If you
right.
go to a new practitioner and they say, oh, I want to biopsy this, well, no, that I noticed that, and it's been there for a long time, and it
Right.
doesn't grow, and and you kind of need to know those things and
Yeah.
recognize that. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. And sometimes looking for symmetry is good. So it's like you might feel something this side. If it's the same on the other side, you're probably okay. But again, it's still good to
And you
get it.
still do the mammogram. Yeah.
Still do it. So yeah, so make sure, ladies, you are getting your mammograms this month. Well, all year round, But you can definitely, you get goodies. I got like a nice little pen, little pink pen yesterday. So get your and a like a
Did you not get a water bottle?
no, I didn't get a straight a magnet. The first time I got a rose, but some interesting things happen because she told me to hold my breath, and I'm like, I don't remember the lady telling me to hold my breath.
Yeah, I recall being told to hold my breath as well.
Like, man, I was
But
what?
more recently,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I
last year.
hold your breath. I was like, hold my breath. I don't remember being told this the first time. And now I'm thinking like this one was very quick. It was just the mammo. When my very first one, it was the mammo coupled with an ultrasound because I have very dense tissue, and they were like, we just want to make sure and double check.
See
And now
everything.
I'm like, it's because I didn't hold my breath. I mean, I'm not a radiologist. I don't know, but my point is, it's fine. You'll get through it. You'll be okay. There is a level of discomfort, but that level of discomfort and in comparison, the exchange of discomfort and in knowing that you're okay is
Right.
it's
It's
worth
worth it. Yeah.
it. All right.
These are
Thank you.
always good.
Yes. So for those of you, we're gonna head over to Master Menulek. That is the channel on YouTube. He's doing live art right now. And for those of you who are catching after, you can go to YouTube and put in Master Menulek, Master. Menulek is Menyelek. And you can look at all of his past tutorials on drawing. I'm still the stick figure queen, but I'm still gonna go over and take the lesson.
I mean, he's doing like digital, really cool things, right? I just try to watch and do something creative while he's doing his
Pretty much.
thing. Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes he does do something where he starts out with the stick figure and kind of guides you through the process.
Yes, those are really
Like,
nice.
oh look, there's an actual body there. But I go right back to stick figuring. So, but some of you may be more artistically
Yeah,
inclined.
join in.
So make sure you go visit that. So we will see you in Two Strongs, everyone. Thank you for joining. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching True Health Live. Peace.
Peace.